You good over there, my friend? I've been meaning to reach out to see what you got going on over there. You good? Are you good? would you say no if you weren't? Miss Penn in the house. What? Come on, act right, technology. Don't be acting stupid. Yep, I'm sure I would. Oh yeah, you would.
What how now?
Yeah.
What's the word?
Oh shit, you already know.
Yeah?
Same
What you
shit.
working on?
You said what I'm working on? Everything.
Yeah.
That's the easiest answer.
Right.
You know my emotional
Right.
filter is at zero. Right. but that's why I gotta check in on you, cause you keep that filter at zero.
What's the outcome of something like that, keeping the emotional filter at zero?
What's the outcome of that? Fucking a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
a goddamn Lucy. That's what I call it. I used to have
Right,
my
right, right,
emotional
right.
filter at a zero. I woke up at the psych ward with people walking around me who was looking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my emotional filter, I turned that motherfucker back on. So I can go home.
Right. Listen. It's like, yo, everybody know you seeing shit, but you ain't got to tell them what you seeing. You know? Keep that shit low key.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
that
that's
shit is
real.
wild. That shit is
Yeah,
wild,
that shit is
man.
real.
I mean, just with all of this bullshit going on, it's like everybody got a conspiracy theory brewing, but the facts are the facts. Motherfuckers dying, you know? I think that's the shit that's, you know, whatever. So how your week been, man?
It was good.
Yeah?
It was good. Yeah. Yep, it was good.
I learned how to make a sweet potato pie. The first one was a fail. My sister gave me the recipe, and I got 15 minutes into the 20-minute cook time, and went to take the trash out and realized, like, oh shit, you didn't put an egg in there. So it was a little runny. The second time I tried it, it came out all right. You know, was able to freak the recipe a little bit. You know, it's pretty cool though. You know,
Gotcha.
so I wanted to talk to you about
So,
concept. I did. You said what?
oh yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was about to say. So concept. You want to talk about concept?
Yeah,
What is
yeah,
that? What is it?
yeah. I want to talk about concept. So I just so like a couple months ago, a friend of mine had put my name in the pool to be selected for some work, and um, the woman called me up, and she threw out this term, high concept portraits, and I didn't know what she meant, you know, um, and I was just like, concept, and I know what those words means independently, but
Right.
I wasn't sure what that meant as a term for photography. So it was like,
Right.
high concept portraits. Like, yeah, I put a lot of idea and thought into the portrait. Is that what she meant? So can you break that down to me? Like, what does that mean? Like a high concept portrait? What does that mean? Like I just want to kind of break that down if I could, or if you
I
could.
mean, high concept portrait. I think it's all bullshit. I think all this shit is
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. I think it's all subjective. I think it's all perception based. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody said to
Mm-hmm.
me, Donald, I want a high concept portrait, I would say, what the fuck do you mean by that? decode your
Right.
language.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it seems
Right.
it be feeling like the terms is just a place to critique and to stay in a position of power is what I be feeling like.
Right. Right.
If I had to, if one of my students said, D Black, I need to make some high concept portraits, then my first thought would be portraiture that's heavily theme based.
Okay.
Like heavily theme based. You
Right.
know, the fucking portraits of the fucking Wizard of Oz characters. You see what I'm saying? Is a high concept portrait. You know, portraits, you know, the pictures I'm taking with the young men with American flag bandanas on is a high concept portrait. It's the
Right.
conversation that the portrait image is having is broader than the sitter. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. What do you mean? What do you mean?
You know, it's
Sitter.
not about like
Like the subject?
portraits often are about, huh? What'd you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying portraits are
No, give me one
often
second.
about. Oh, you broke up. What'd you say?
Yeah, no, you were saying like it's more important than the sitter. How do you mean?
Well, I mean that the conversation that the image is having is not about the person in the picture. It's about whatever that concept theme is. You know, it's not
Right.
about that little boy. It's not about you know Michael in the picture. It's about
Right.
what's the conversation that little boy. You know, he becomes a character. It's you
Right.
know first person, second
Right.
person,
Right. Right. Right.
third
Right. Right. Right.
person.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
but ultimately,
So.
concept is what concept is. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? And does that match what the work is talking about? Like, is it the same thing?
Right. So how important is an artist statement in regard to the concept?
The artist statement
Or
and the
is
concept, huh? What?
go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
gonna let me talk and finish, or you gonna? I
Yeah,
can listen if you
it's
want me
like
to listen.
it's a lag in this shit. My bad, man. Go ahead.
Um, you know, if the concept is what are you talking about, and the statement is what are you talking about, they should be one and the same. But ultimately, people, you know, the creative landscape is all fucked. 50% of it is all fucked. Because right now, you can just step into anything and say that you are an expert at doing it. And you get to define it yourself. You know, so oftentimes I feel like I'm experiencing an artist statement that's saying something different than the messaging in the work. Because it's not completely lining up. I believe my experience of the work that I appreciate the most is usually when what's being said about the work is the same thing that the work is saying. It's the same conversation. You know, like a lot of times people will sit and they'll say, okay, well, here go my 10 whatever the fucks. You know, it could be photographs, drawings, any form of art. Here go 10 of them. And then you can get those to me and I can look at all 10 of them and I can sit there and I can take notes and I can say, oh, wow, this is what this thing is communicating to me. And that will completely be different than the statement that the artist wrote. Right. Which means what somebody wanted it to be about don't always line up to actually what this shit is really about. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, so what happens is I believe that the idea of developing your concepts and the idea of being able to write a statement about your work is what helped me start to understand what I'm saying, what I want to say, what I'm not saying, what my subconscious is saying, what people's perception, like all of just to try to figure any of that statement concept stuff out, helped me figure out what my work is fucking talking about, and ultimately what I care to talk about. And what I care to talk about wasn't always the same thing as what the work was actually saying.
Interesting. What was your like? When did you come to that realization, or better yet, like how did you come to that realization?
That it wasn't saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, me paying attention to what the images were saying to me,
Okay.
in relationship to what the images were saying to everybody else.
Right.
You know, and it was my own personal grading system that started to develop, because I could see where my intentions were being received, and I could see when my intentions weren't. And I was also able to see what my work was saying when I stopped trying to create the intention.
Right. And I'm glad you actually brought that up, because, last week when we were talking, you were saying, basically you gave me an assignment to like go out, not to necessarily focus on capturing a certain thing, but whatever catches my eye, snap that. So it makes me ask the question of like, well, how do you come to the concept in a shooting situation? Do you create a shooting situation specifically to explore the concept? Do you, like how do you come to the concept? Like what it's like the chicken or the egg conversation. Does the concept come first and then the photographs, or do the photographs come first and then you extract the concept from the batch of photographs?
What's the answer to the chicken and egg scenario? It's the same answer.
Right. They all
Which
come
one
at the
comes
same
first?
time. Right.
You said what?
Right.
They don't
So I
come at
mean,
the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The chicken, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which one?
The egg.
And where did the egg come from?
From the chicken.
But I
So
thought you
it's
said
just
the egg
like,
came first. You see what I'm saying? It's the same
yeah.
way with concept. Either you go into a situation to discover what's there,
Mm-hmm.
or you
Mm-hmm.
go in there with an intention of what you want to see.
Hmm.
It's like when you get a car. It's the same scenarios. When you get a new car,
Mm-hmm.
how many times do you see that same car you just bought?
Yeah, quite often.
Because what happens is, the way our perceptions is wired, the moment you
Mm-hmm.
focus in on this car that you got, how much it costs, you done Googled it, all the different shit. Now your perception is open to receiving it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why now you drive down the street and you realize that everybody got your fucking car when you never noticed
Right.
anybody having it the day before. It's just because
Right.
your mind is aware. Same thing. You go into a room and you saying, I'm photographing black men. And you walk into a
Mm-hmm.
room, what you're going to walk out with your camera, is black men. It don't mean that that's the only thing that was there. It means that you had already
Right.
decided what you wanted to pay attention, what you wanted to heighten your visualization to.
So in
And when
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Mm-mm-mm.
No, go.
No, because you know, like, so say for example, like this is my first submission right this week for Photoville, and this is my first submission to anything, and so like last year I was planning to have an through, so I had a back. Throughout the year, I've been able to like some other images or go back and find other images that I felt when compared to that original batch, some of the original ones didn't hold up. So the theme or the concept started to kind of expand and whatnot. Um, um, so like at that point, when it came down to me to selecting like the 10 images, the first stage was like, okay, what are the 10 images that are going to carry this concept that I want to do and I want to create? Started with 15, wanted to narrow down to 10, but even still, I was not 100% sure that you know, I should have stayed like narrow within like one or two shooting situations. Or do you understand what I'm saying? This is like, what am I selecting from? Am I selecting from a narrow shooting situation that might not give me all of the images that I'm that may speak to the concept, or do I, you know, just pluck through everything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk specific. It's image dependent. You know, it's not a general equation. It's based on the work, kind of work. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Right,
In
right.
terms, you know, because I already
And then
know
it make me
exactly
ask
what
a
you're
question.
saying. If you people, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you said,
No, 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 go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say if you trying to figure out is if you want to submit a group of portraits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, did you put the red bandana on everybody's head? And is that the concept? And do I just submit all 20 of those portraits? Or do I pick a portrait from that one and a portrait from when I put blue bandanas on and one where people had the eyes closed? So do all those hold as a concept or do it has to be written and be the same thing? See, my argument is
Right.
that that's you trying to figure out their system of communication, institutional,
Mm-hmm.
art world, photography world, because the structure of all of it is very assignment college based. So you trying to figure
Right.
out when I look into the world of photographers, they done all shot the same bullshit ass fucking portrait in front of the same backdrop and they're getting
Mm-hmm.
picked. So maybe I should do, you know, the people that's around me in front of the same backdrop and then I submit all of that and then maybe mine will get picked.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I supposed
Mm-hmm.
to do 10 variations of how I do portraiture for the whole group of my portraits to get picked? The
Mm-hmm.
reality is portrait is portrait as the concept is incorrect
Mm-hmm.
because it's a technique. That's the technical
Mm-hmm.
side. That's the technical side of it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Like if you are trying to construct images together
Mm-hmm.
to form a concept,
Mm-hmm.
it it means that there may not be a concept there. You see what I'm saying?
Ah. Yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's that part of it. I mean, because that's ultimately I already know how the submissions work. I done submitted to 1,000 things,
Mm-hmm.
and what I
Mm-hmm.
realize is very much that. Oftentimes, you as the creative person, you got to apply to something. You looking at their theme, you want their money, you want their stage, you want their platform. So now you're
Right.
looking at your own work through the lens of what they say they're looking for, and you're
Mm-hmm.
making your work fit into that. And it ain't necessarily always a easy thing.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I recognize that for a long time, I witnessed people changing and making up a new idea every time it's time
Mm.
to submit to
Right. Right.
try to get some kind of opportunity. The
Mm-hmm.
reality is we all supposed to be applying for shit with what we're already doing. You know, but
Right.
that ain't but that take a minute to figure out for a lot of creative people.
Yeah, I remember you
Um,
gave me that note a couple years ago.
Yeah. So it's like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, so the question still becomes what's the concept? You know, what
Mm-hmm.
concept did you figure out? What did you stumble on? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What's the
Yeah, yeah,
theme?
yeah.
What's the theme? But that's a real question.
Oh,
What
right.
was the concept?
So there's this idea that like in essence, like, you know, there are these people who I feel like started humanity in terms of like the way their faces are structured, where their bodies are built. Um, and I call those type of people salt, like the salt of the earth, right? And living in Flatbush, you see a lot of these people with this, you know, these high cheekbone structures or these just strong fucking bodies. And you know, just over the last, like, say, like 2 or 3 years from like the Juve parades and stuff like that, you know, I'm able to like capture a lot of these Flatbush people. Flatbush is a place that, you know, that's where I live, so that's where I see a lot of those individuals. So I mean, and that's just my, you know, my thing. So I just love photographing the people from Flatbush. And so So the title was Salt Between Church and Empire, which is Flatbush. So it's just like the documentation of like the people who create culture in Flatbush, the Juve festivals, the Flatbush parades and shit like that. So yeah.
So, so it's event photography.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm only asking. I'm trying to picture what your concept is, because ultimately it's kind of like if you say concept, it's like idea. It's like, what's the idea? You said way more than the concept.
So now the interesting thing, so like the interesting thing is when the submission was of for people, right? So it's like the people of Flatbush. That's essentially what the concept is.
Okay, so that's simple, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's simple in terms of how to sift through images.
Right.
Like if the concept, if the submission category is people, and the concept is people of Flatbush,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what's up. And we've been talking about perspective. That's been like a lot of like the undertone like one of the talking points throughout the conversations, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the button. Is like the language of submissions creates that subjectivity of like the perspective is like like that ain't the people of Flatbush, or that ain't the that ain't the American dream, or whatever it is that you saying that what it is. It's like sometimes the onlooker may have their own personal critique, and so like a lot.
But what I learned, what I started experiencing, I would always ask, well, I would always feel like whatever the theme of anything was, I always felt like I didn't fit. I was, somebody sent me
the theme
a
that was
submission to
established,
apply for some American Dream shit or freedom of speech, right? So in my mind, I don't think freedom of speech exists, which means I might not be the appropriate creative person to speak to freedom of speech, is what I thought. But then what happened is I realized that is my concept. My concept is I don't believe that the freedom of speech exists.
Right.
That is my idea. So can I create something that represents that without me explaining it, and without me and without it being dependent on the statement that I write that's helping frame people into seeing that? We try to trick people into seeing the shit that we want to see by telling them the shit that we hope is there. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So ultimately, is that. So I applied. I said, I don't think the freedom of speech fucking exists. I was so angry. I said what I really felt. And I'm realizing, like, oh, the more I say what I really feel, the less I'm being rejected.
Right.
Which was fucking crazy to me. It's like, oh, okay. I just lashed out. White people this, niggas that. It's inappropriate for me to be the artist making freedom of speech mural for a place that don't have no black people going into it. See, in my mind, me saying all that is gonna make them say, "Oh, we not fucking with this nigga," and that's actually the opposite of what happened. It was more like, "Oh shit, he's making a point, and we can see that point represented in these images."
That's funny, man. Because I remember like when I was in undergrad, I wrote this play called No Refunds and shit, right? And it was about a Southern politician. Do you remember this? Do you remember this shit? It was about the Southern politician who went to the department store to return 3 slaves because they didn't work right. So they had like all these like malfunctions and shit. And it was a satire. I remember it being read at OU, and like people coming up to me. That I remember we had this Nigerian professor in the School of Theater named A.C. Abba Arobi, God rest his soul. He was like one of maybe like 2 or 3 black people that were adults. That were faculty in the audience. And I remember like as people were reading, the audience they didn't know how to respond. They didn't know if they should laugh at the shit that they felt was funny. They chuckled, but they kind of were embarrassed to laugh. But I had some people who were brave enough to actually come up to me and they said, "Yo, I thought that shit was funny as fuck." And I remember submitting it like when we like after we had moved on the East Coast. I remember submitting it to theater houses. I remember, you know, after grad school in Philly, submitting to theater houses, even like 23, submitting Foxhole, and it just like they were just like, we don't do that kind of work here. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I don't know if the world, the submission world in theater was different than the submission world in photography.
All,
Do you understand
all
what
that
I'm
shit is
saying?
the same. All of the worlds are affected and plagued by the same pandemic. Fucking
Right.
racism, man. All of the
Right.
worlds are infected by that shit. So no, it's not a different experience.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the same experience
Mm-hmm.
manifesting in different ways.
Because I
You
mean,
know, I
yeah.
I start hearing the word submit differently.
Right.
I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to submit.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I want to submit?
Right.
What I recognize is the submission game is a pimps and hoes game, man.
Right. Right.
Once I
Right.
paid
Right.
enough money to be told by white people that what I'm doing ain't good enough, I started looking like I was they note. I'm like, oh, I'm they note. That's why they email me every year so I can submit another $35 because they know I'm chasing this dream like all these other people that's paying them
Right.
$35.
Right. Right. Right.
I definitely look at, the idea that some of the people and artists that I really appreciate, they ain't submitting to these fucking competitions.
Right.
And I feel like that's why they are, where I perceive that they are. I'm learning that in the world of photography, there's a community of people in somewhere in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
that ain't
Mm-hmm.
about to ever quit, but they're
Mm-hmm.
never about to be the keynote. They're
Right.
gonna be at the table. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And they done
Mm-hmm.
paid $500 to be there or $5,000 to be there. Some of
Mm-hmm.
these artists are getting invited. Some of these artists are being paid. I told
Right.
myself I had to just cut down a little bit on the submission and make the
Right.
work because I realized that submitting and being rejected and then watching what wins was driving me nuts.
Fucking you up. Yeah. Fucking
It
you
was
up.
hurting. It was hurting my soul, man. It's kind of like I don't
Yeah.
mind losing. I just feel like you didn't beat me.
You ain't beat me, nigga. I lost.
You didn't beat me. Come back, take your shoes off, and let's race again. That's how I be feeling. And then it's
Yeah.
like, well, no, Donald, you just mad, you angry, you jealous, you got ego problems. That's what all of the
No.
self-help development books say. And I'm sitting there like, oh, I can't believe this shit. I need to
Mm-hmm.
just I need to write my own book saying my own message, creating
Mm-hmm.
all of the work, because the submission shit really dawned on me, right? So you
Right.
got Cleveland, Ohio, you
Mm-hmm.
got $150 million generated from 30 cents on a pack of cigarettes. And when the first time I submitted my work, I might have
Mm-hmm.
been 28, 29. I
Mm-hmm.
recognized that it was older black artists there
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't know existed at all. Because in
Mm-hmm.
my mind, I'm at Cleveland School of the Arts. The artists that are adults that I engage with are the ones that the school brings in. So
Mm-hmm.
if the school is bringing in predominantly white artists, the message to the kids there is there are no black artists. That's the
Mm-hmm.
underlying message. So when I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing all these black artists there to watch they stuff get juried and all that, and I realize that from like listening to their conversations, like their plan to make the work was based on their ability to get the money.
Mm.
So that threw me. That was an eye-opening situation. It said, "Oh, I don't identify with what they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing.
Right. Right.
I'm making it regardless.
Right.
Like
Right.
whether I'm making it or not is not is not one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
How I'm going to pay for it is not one of my questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which means for me, it was very humbling, very
Right.
revealing. Like,
Right.
oh, Donald, all you got to do is just keep making it work because you're not dealing with some of the challenges that some of these other artists really are.
Right.
I wasn't going to work at a job for 30, 40 years waiting on retirement to be able to take this art thing serious.
Right, right, right,
So
right.
now I'm seeing people who, 70 and up, now with the means to be able to relax long enough to make this work. And they doing it, and a lot of them are investing a lot of time and energy into what's being sold to them. The opportunity. And Donald recognizes that most of the opportunities is literally an opportunity for you to be one of their money sources.
Right, right, right. One hand washes the other, both hands wash the face. But because I remember a couple years ago, talking to you about like, I don't know, we were having a conversation about submissions. He was just like, yo, he was like, nah, I'm doing this shit and I'm gonna keep doing it. And I remember, coming out of undergrad, out of undergrad and after grad school was just like, like wherever I can get a theater house, wherever I can put my shit up, I'm gonna put my shit up. And I think a part of the whole submission process was starting to fuck on me after, I'd been to Philly. I'm working with theater houses. I had interned with, all like the right, organizations and companies. Thought I was rubbing the right elbows and bypass that whole, Ivy circuit and shit like that. And, and I thought I was doing good shit. And I remember, getting a call from Cleveland Playhouse when I left New York. And, I couldn't see them producing 23 outside of the way that I produce Foxhole. I couldn't see them producing 23 like that,
Right.
And then even like having conversations with fucking the Caramel House, like all the fucking loop-de-loop bullshit conversations I had, or calling back, or he's here on every fifth Wednesday of the month. Okay. And you can't get in contact with nobody.
Right. Well, see, the reality is this: the way I see it is probably. I mean, and we got a lot of technology outlets and resources, and we got cameras and equipment and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But we being Black folks, we being the creative person who's on the outside, won't just spend our time in life's work and life's energy building something equivalent. We want to get in, and we want to be able to be ourselves. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is that's not it ain't the only way. But if you're gonna submit to me, if you're gonna surrender to these rules, take your shoes off, take your socks off, don't go in this room. Like if you're gonna walk in my house and abide by my rules, submit to me, then you can be in here. So then the question becomes, what is the conversation of these houses? That's kind of what I'm always thinking about. People, I don't know, these institutions and places and said some real key stuff to me. When they introduce a conversation and say, well, the people who come here, I already know who the people that come there, even though I'm one of them. I recognize that y'all ain't trying to hear this nigga shit. They not trying to, they're not confident. They don't care, whatever. I ain't even gonna speculate the intentionality of it all, because all of the bullshit that happens always falls on, oh, that wasn't my intention.
Right.
Our conversation that we care to have, that we speak, and when we're speaking from the place of Black folks, is not the conversation that a lot of these places are ready to put their, to risk their everything on. Like, I always recognize that. Like, if I was a white person, I would be cautious at lining up near Donald Black Jr. if I was a white person.
Right. Now, why do you say that?
You said, why do I say that? Because it's like in any movie or any of our dead 40 and under fucking heroes. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right, right.
That seemed to be what was happening. It seemed to be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, got you. So if you saying I remind you of that, that's why you not about to buy this work, or you're not about to say, hey, Donald, hey, look, hey, they ain't trying to spread this shit. They ain't necessarily trying to help the messaging grow because either
Right.
they understand it all too well or they don't really understand it that much. Whatever it is, it's kind of like I'm always more so blown away by some of these institutional folks who most of them be white, call me and got an idea and a plan and they
Mm-hmm.
running it by me. It's like, damn, how many other ways can I say that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and it's uncomfortable following that.
Right,
It's uncomfortable. You saying, "Oh, I'm just making this up as I go," just and giggle. That shit is not funny. Why are
right,
you the leader if you don't know where the fuck we're going?
right, right,
you
right.
want
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
you want a tour guide. You know what I'm saying? You want somebody who you blind. A lot of these institutional places got somebody in charge. They're blind, walking a bunch of other blind people through a situation,
Mm-hmm.
and they want somebody who can see in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting
Right.
there saying, if I'm gonna be the eyes that can see in the dark, you get the fuck behind me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you can't see when something is coming ahead of us. I'm
Right.
gonna get fucked up.
Right. Like, oh, this nigga done ran off the road. I knew I should have drove.
And I think it's all based on what we're talking about and how we're
Right.
talking about it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at what is gravitated towards and when people get hesitant. And I thought white people, institutions, galleries, museums will be more hesitant
Mm-hmm.
when I show a nigga with chains all on him
Mm-hmm.
than a little black boy who got a gun, you know, on all his Instagram feeds popping
Mm-hmm.
willies. You feel what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? The reality is, oh, y'all want the slave shit. Y'all scared of the little black boy who's experiencing being free. You see
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. That's
and and
interesting.
and that
Mm-hmm.
conversation is the entry point.
Right. Right.
Fill out this application. What you got to say? So, what organizations, institutions, and people that start doing is they start coding the message of what they are looking for
Mm-hmm.
so they can get the audience of artists that they want to apply. So, I'm going to explain that.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes the themes are very vague. People, travel,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
then sometimes you get these myths of the American dream. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you look up and you get a high influx of people of color
Right. Right.
applying
Right.
and receiving it.
Right.
And then now that now you got all these people of color receiving it, when you look
Mm-hmm.
at the audience, you
Mm-hmm.
recognize that this ain't what these motherfuckers in the audience want to hear.
Right.
Because you look up and some shit that you usually see a packed room every
Mm-hmm.
time it's a white person on stage. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it's the person of color on
They
stage,
put you in the
all of
little
the white
room.
people is somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So experience and all that, I'm like, oh, it's conversation, it's topic, it's concept. It's,
Mm-hmm.
the more I get in tune with the messages that the work is saying and how I feel about amplifying those messages,
Mm-hmm.
the more I feel like I'm isolating myself from the torture of the art world.
So real quick, somebody said, do you think that you would avoid the conversation out of fear? Austin Powers, which conversation are you speaking to, just out of curiosity?
The conversation,
Oh,
just I guess, I'm assuming it's like the radical conversation. The
fear
black
like
the
backlash and shit. And
no fear, but I believe fear. Yes, I
mm-hmm.
believe that internally on some
Mm-hmm.
inferiority complex, internalized oppression, we are keeping the truth away from the establishment because I believe that subconsciously we recognize that we feel that that's keeping us out. Mm-hmm. You know, I refuse to submit. No, they will avoid. Right. What's weird? I feel like every time I'm selected, it's because they want some nigga shit in here. And they ain't got to be the ones that's got to deal with the backlash of it. Like, I feel like I get invited to be provocative. I get invited because I'm making people uncomfortable. And I recognize my own fear that I'm carrying when I'm invited and when I'm accepting. Because I feel like I'm in an experience that I would say that, you know, some of these other creative, you know, black folks who could talk that shit on stage or whatever, it's a similar thing. Like, I start feeling like, oh, is this a mistake? And then it's kind of like with Donald, you can't let yourself surrender to the fear of it all. I mean, I would imagine that the conversations that we have at home with our family, in our barbershops, in our neighborhood, and in our community make us uncomfortable to have them out loud. And I only say that because I feel like I'm in a lot of conversations compare and contrast. Compare and contrast what?
The conversations, the barbershop, or the colloquial, like internal conversations, or
I'm gonna take a shot at it. I'm gonna take a shot at it. All right, so at one point, I feel like I was learning the photography world and what they wanted from me, right? So when I would apply to something, let's say I would apply to a opportunity to show my work, I would submit something that was non-identifying, something that wasn't identifying me as a black person. So I would submit trees, right? So and I'm just making all this shit up because I don't let this shit fucking happen for real. So I'm gonna submit my trees, and then when I go to the exhibit, I'm one of the only niggas there, and it's a room full of white people. And now, not only am I uncomfortable because it's a room full of white people engaging with me with like, why are you here? Or I'm down with the niggas. Both of them equally make me uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like, just period. I don't care about the fact that you listen to rap music. That's racist to me. So I learned for myself that I'm better in the room if I'm one of the only black people, if I feel like I got my army and my ammunition on the wall. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a little easier for me to be in the room. And when I say easier, it's easier for me to hold in what I'm really feeling. So it's not hard for me to be in those rooms. It's hard for me to suppress what's going on with me while I'm in those rooms. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I will put work in the room. I'll put work in the room that's helping me be in it. You know? So if I feel like, and it's to the point where I will be in these shows and I'm trying to make sure that is the strongest image in the room is of a black person, right? I used to pride myself by that. And then, you know, 7 to 8 years of me doing that, it started being, oh, I ain't putting a nigga on the wall again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking that me putting one nigga on the wall is going to turn into 10 niggas being on the wall the next year for this same show with this same foundation money that's generated by the same poor people smoking the same fucking brands of cigarettes. But I look up and it's like, oh shit, I'm the only nigga again? And then it got to the point where it's like, man, fuck a show. Fuck a show. Fuck a submission. Make the work go viral. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I ain't saying participate, but it was like a 10-year period that I thought submitting my work was going to get me to the next place that I was trying to go, the next level of this journey. And I realized that it's not. It's a hamster wheel.
Right. I mean, you know, but some of the people, they on the East Coast, and they just now getting introduced to you. What do you feel was you kind of like breaking out of that? I guess, like kind of cracking through the surface, like where you know, you kind of departed from that idea of like submitting to the work and then being able to and and saying like, okay, this is what I am doing, and then being able to, I guess, get some sort of like, I don't want to say recognition, but self-satisfaction of that. Like, what was the project that kind of broke that mold for you?
Well, I don't think it was one thing that broke the mold.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the accumulation of me evaluating the opportunities that were real opportunities and the opportunities that weren't opportunities, but they were posed as opportunities. I think it was the accumulation of it. So what is your thought process now? Okay. So it was the accumulation of these experiences of kind of really being, I feel like I'm walking the journey of the first black. And I have a perception of the first black this and the first black that. That's not what I aspire to be. That's not what I aspire to do. I'm not trying to change their system. I'm not trying to break their system. I'm trying not to adopt their system. And I'm trying not to be overpowered and disintegrated by their system,
Right.
So
Right.
out of, learning how the creative system works when they don't want a person of color versus when they do, is when it started being, so when y'all ain't getting no outcome where it's a person of color receiving this stuff, it's not because you don't know how to.
Right. It's just a preference. It's you don't want to.
That ain't what you want, because when you want it, you are not accidentally hiring a white person to put work in any spot that I've been commissioned to put work at. You see what I'm saying? And once I started, all that stuff started dawning on me, it was really like me saying, you know what? I'm going to make this work forever. So what am I about to creatively do? It's like my creative energy towards my work started really being my creative approach to my whole life, which is, what's the most creative fucking thing I can do? Okay, start putting up the images on the wall where don't nobody give a fuck and wait for somebody to say something about that.
Right.
It was that, like, at the point where I started being frustrated because I feel like I'm waiting on somebody else to create an opportunity for me, is when I started to change my own behavior. So my thought process now is do the raw shit so they call you and ask you, so you don't have to sit and try to sift through what's real and what ain't.
It was
like,
right.
It's just the full-time job of trying to guess what the right opportunity is versus the wrong opportunity. It just became so daunting to me that I just bowed out of it. Like, man, fuck that, man. Like, I'm gonna do this. I can't play the game of applying and being rejected and being critiqued by someone that doesn't even know how to speak my language. You know what I'm saying? And then me having to watch what gets picked. I'm telling you, me having to watch what's getting selected has been the ultimate torture. Like, ultimate torture. Like, this is what the fuck they wanted? And that's been happening so much, I kind of got a, solid perception of what I feel like they want.
Right.
But I'm too scared to miss my opportunity, so I still apply. That's the shit that's
the
with
fucked
me.
up part about it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so my perspective now is I have to move. I feel we all should move like don't none of these places exist.
Right.
And create new places. And those places ain't gotta be the fucking Cleveland Museum of Art. And they ain't gotta be the Caramel House either, because it's a lot about those places nationwide, worldwide, that don't work for a lot of people. We're in a new day and age of engaging an audience and having a conversation and sharing the work.
Keith said, if you ain't a safe Negro, you ain't getting picked. Yeah, so and I agree. And so, like, I guess that point, and then the last thing you just said, about engaging and generating an audience. I mean, that's the arts, as a whole, like, trying to generate an audience and going about the work the way you've gone about the work. How do you like how can I say this? Like, how are you able to kind of collect the audience around in the way that you're doing work, meaning like, like you doing you I mean, like some people would say, it's like a throwback to graffiti, because it's in these places, or some people will call it a mural. Some people don't even think graffiti and mural are the same thing, but some people say it's all the same thing. But it's like, how are you able to generate the conversation around the work? How are you able to hear the
Well,
conversation around the
because
work? Mm-hmm.
because ultimately, and then they say I
Mm-hmm.
hear you speaking in code. Hey,
Key.
uh, hey, Kay,
Case said,
explain
what's
to
up?
me what you mean. Hear me speaking in code. Because what I was gonna say though, I think
Mm-hmm.
art is the coded language. One,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but then in me saying that, I want to follow up with what you just mentioned, which is how do
Mm-hmm.
you generate the conversation? The work is supposed to carry the conversation. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have when you're making art, you don't have to have a conversation. The work
Mm-hmm.
is the conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my mind, I can't. Well, not in my mind. I mean, it's one thing for me to sit and say that black fathers are out of the home, and I grew up being a pro-black, blah blah blah, what the fuck,
Right.
and I feel like that is the conversation that's being had. That they
Right.
want. You want Donald to talk about being the po little bro. I don't have nothing. Whatever. But when I
Mm-hmm.
take the image that's carrying
Mm-hmm.
that conversation
Mm-hmm.
and put it where they are uncomfortable
Yeah.
being
Mm-hmm.
30 feet, the
Right.
conversation comes to me.
Right. Right.
And I don't got to spend a lot of time trying to figure out where the right place and the wrong place is. Like that shit is talking every single day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, with the mural or with
Mm-hmm.
one of my other images, anywhere else, somebody might experience one of my images. You're supposed to be putting your message in your work, and you're supposed to be putting your work out there in a way that it could be experienced. And
Yeah.
if the
Mm-hmm.
place isn't allowing your work to be experienced, then the place is not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Like Baldwin and Friends, for me was, like I remember the first year, like the second year trying to, generate, a bigger space to have it, something that'll kind of like put me, substantiate, the work. But then, like, similarly, like what I said was, it's like, maybe not focus on, the place to do the work. Maybe just focus about who you're doing the work with, like having those voices along with you that had like some of the same questions and driving points that you had to kind of amplify the conversation. And what I found was, because like a lot of times I don't even really try to collect, like, like, well, like, I mean, every now and again, you want to know, like, well, how did that impact you or whatever. But then when you hear that experience that people had is rolled over into the book that they're writing, the article that they're writing, or you
Exactly.
see the language that you employed in the construction of the work being used colloquially, like everybody's using this shit because they understand, like one of the things that came out of the conversation was, is like, blackness is not a race thing, it's an idea of sameness, right? So in that same regard, you got a lot of black people promoting the idea of white supremacy or this idea of sameness, you know what I'm saying? And so, that idea or that definition being bled out and trickled out through so many other people's works, that was like, I was like, oh shit, so this shit is actually working, regardless of the write up that I was hoping to get, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. We got a couple things somebody said.
Right. I got somebody sent me a
Mhm.
message. They put,
Okay.
where have you been able to present your authentic self both on the wall and in the room?
Mhm.
Um have I what I guess the question would be, have I ever been able to, what was the word she used? To present my authentic self. Both? Um, I would argue that the rooms that I create, so the
That's a fact.
spaces that what like it's kind of when I then said, okay, I'm about to have my own show. And then I'm gonna be the one facilitating it.
That's
Ultimately, the people that come into the room help me be able to be my full authentic self. And then the work that I brought into the room is the purest form of myself. Because I can picture being in a couple shows where the work on the wall was beating the fuck out of people, and then me sitting there talking about it in the room, walking through. I felt like it was like I had an army. And then ultimately, it wasn't all white people. Like I feel like when I facilitate a show and host an exhibition and all that, it's a beautiful blend of people because I don't have one specific audience. I recognize that my audience experiences me in different ways. Southeast side of Cleveland, a lot of them fuck with the murals that'll never go to University Circle to go to a show or a group show that I might be in or be a part of. And I don't blame them because I'm anxious my whole way on my way to the show, making sure I didn't hit the joint, took me a shot. I'm riding my bike, popping a wheelie because I'm trying to bring my energy level down because I'm already bracing myself for whatever this race-based experience is about to be that I'm having,
the interesting to that same point, like when I did Foxhole at the Playhouse, that was a and I don't want to bring like too much emotion to it, but like one of the dopest things about that project was, my homie took the photos on the fucking fire escape, with some sneakers. We talked about, like this is the message I'm trying to communicate. Well, now that was 23, but then you shot the photos for Foxhole too. You did it in Queens, right? With KB and Ron Bryce. The one was in Fresh. The way we went about the work, about generating the audience, was on some Cleveland shit. All the people that were in the audience were everybody from our neighborhood. Kashawn was in it. You had did the photos. There was the people from Kids Foot Locker that were there. It was like the whole community of Cleveland was there. So when, or at least my community from Cleveland, our community from Cleveland, so it felt good as fuck to be in that room. And I haven't been able to do much in Cleveland since. I mean, like, except a couple music shows. But
we got 2 minutes.
Okay. I just remember like the audience talk back was just like, it was like I was having a conversation with people who I see every fucking day. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's
the question that I posed to you before this died is, so why are you not in a space to recreate that? Becomes the question.
Yeah. That's and I hope that's rhetoric because I'm that's something I'm always pushing to answer, because like even like the the work that I created and here in terms of like visual work, it still don't stand up to what I've done when I go home and I'm hanging out with y'all or hanging out with my family or just moving around the city in my natural germane way. So, this is a dope ass conversation, man.
Yeah. This is a raw conversation. So, hey, just real quick, the people that's still on, hey, we're gonna look at some of the questions that was posed, possibly turn some of the questions that came in into conversation for next week, and then we're gonna keep tuning in every Sunday. And then at some point, we probably gonna roll into some specific photography conversations that's popping up on Wednesdays. I appreciate the fact that y'all be really engaged and asking questions and responding to questions. Because I feel like this is what we have. This is the counter shit that need to be done. It's not waiting on them to do it for us because we don't need them to. And ultimately,
I mean, because like,
they
and then and it's a couple. We got more than a few creators in the room, and I think like that like just having an expanded thought process around the shit. That's what's up, yo. I holla.
All right, hey y'all. Hey, next week.
Yep.